benefactors of Ioannidis that has been a hallmark of Greek history, and every major building that you see in Athens has the stamp of some benefactor. How would benefactors be attracted? We have 15% of the most rich people in Naftalia all over the world, and we have many other people of Greek origin that are extremely wealthy, and I would believe that they're very interested to contribute to a renaissance of the country. However, no benefactor, I think, will invest on something that will be coined as, well, we need money to pay for our administrative balance, or we cannot pay for the trash to be recircled, or we cannot pay for something that doesn't have a vision. A benefactor would be attracted if there is a vision, that as a university we have these 2, 5, 10, 20 people who are really the best in the world, or who want to become the best in the world, and they're young and they have the best credentials and they will get there. Are you willing to support them? So I think that this is something that we need to think seriously, and obviously these people have to be completely detached from the corrupt system, because otherwise they will not be able to inspire anyone. How about other types of research and development investment? As I said, despite efforts over time, the investment in research and technology remains extremely low. We need to increase that, but if you go to government officials, they will say, we have no money right now, what are you talking about? So the solution is actually that, yes, okay, government doesn't have money, maybe that's not that bad, because if they had money, they would spend it for the wrong things. Can you just open new billets, new positions in universities, and attract highly trained scientists with high credentials that will take care of supporting their own salary and their own team? Infrastructure in Greek universities and research institutes is not that bad. Actually, if you look at the machinery and platforms and tools that have been bought over time, sometimes they're better compared to some of the leading institutions. It's just that usually they're bought and they become kind of a private ownership of one researcher or one team. So if these resources could be used, and if you had young researchers who have an opportunity to take positions, these researchers will bring the money. They have been doing that all along, all these years. They have been bringing far more money than their salary. Currently, they cannot really increase their salary. So even if they bring $50 million, the best that they can do is to increase their salary to a condition that would be far less than 1/3 of a graduate student. So who's going to do that? Very, very few people. You need to be crazy. I went back to Greece because I was crazy, honestly, and I'm very happy for that. But I cannot go to my trainees and tell them, go sacrifice yourself. Okay, just go there and you will be bankrupt, you will not be able to have any quality of life because you will have absolutely no money, but you will die for the glory of Greece. Well, some people will do it, but I think I want to be also realistic. How about the private sector? The private sector is also going through some crisis and some soul searching. And in the past, there were many efforts to try to couple the private sector to university research. In countries that have a healthy private sector, this is wonderful, okay? Because you really have innovation and entrepreneurship, and you see things that are happening in the lab then being translated and becoming useful therapies, new drugs, new biologics, new technologies that will save people. If you don't have that, though, if you don't have a private sector industry that is really looking forward and trying to be competitive at a global level, it just becomes a burden. If you have to find a partner and there's no partner who is willing to really to pay attention to high quality science and high quality translational research, why do you want that? It's only going to drag you down. So usually in this type of partnerships, the performance of the pair is dragged by the worst of the two. We need to invest to the best, innovative, excellent teams. There are several such teams still in Greece fighting against the odds under very different circumstances. We just need to make sure that there is some way that they do get supported. And I think that the other thing we need to think about is, how are we going to judge these people? How are we going to decide who are really the best scientists who are still in Greece or who are willing to come back to Greece and fight? Peer review. Sounds great. The United States has established a system of peer review over many decades now. It's functioning fairly well, not perfect. I have written several papers about shortage of good peer reviewers and shortcomings of peer review, but it's not that we will waste all our best scientists. Peer review in Greece means that you will destroy the best scientists. Clearly, if you have open peer review, the best scientists will be annihilated. You will just get the average to worse to prevail. So there has to be some societal consensus and agreement that we want peer review by the very best scientists. Let Nobel laureates decide who are the best scientists in Greece or who would be the ones to be recruited. If really Philhellenes want to save the country, there could be such task forces. There have been efforts from Nobel Prize winners to support Greek research. They should take the lead to identify best scientists and recruit the best scientists back to Greece. And I think that there's then some other possibilities. Can we make leading Greek scientists more visible? Can we give them the podium to be able to talk about what they do, about what their contribution to society might be, why their research is important? What have they done with their lives? What was the pathway that they followed? What was their paradigm? Instead of listening to politicians and pop stars and singers and football players, can we give voice to people who know what they're talking about? And sometimes what they know might be immediately applicable also to issues that have societal and public relevance. So science and technology is not just some curiosity, it's there to make our life better, to help our economy, to build our infrastructure, to give transparency to our world, to make us more democratic, to make us better people. So can we do that? If we do that, we shouldn't entangle them in politics, because currently when I say that, I hear people saying, oh, so let's get scientists and make them prime ministers and ministers and so forth. They don't have to do that. Prime ministers and ministers, they are administrators. Practically, they should do their job. They should run their shop. They should care for their people. They should listen to knowledge. And knowledge is available. We're not in the prehistoric age. There is knowledge for different questions that are of importance to the Greek people. And eventually, we need to convince the community that someone can be important and have something important to say by being a scientist. It's something that the Greek community at large is not accustomed to. I mentioned my proposal about bringing young scientists and allow them to build their salary, build their teams, build what they need, and create yet another generation of scientists. We need to safeguard meritocracy. I mentioned the selection of the best by an international task force of top caliber scientists. And finally, this is about the Greek brain drain. But as I mentioned, there's brain drain everywhere. And something that I'm always surprised at Stanford is whenever I have a new colleague who I meet who has asked for an appointment or he knocks my door and enters my office, I ask his or her name, and much of the time I cannot understand where he or she is from. There's so many names that I don't know their origin, but here he is, he or she is, and he or she is so bright and can really blow me to pieces with the ideas that he or she would propose. Can we exploit global talent? Can we get the best minds to be interested in Greece? And I think this is very important. Stanford and major universities can select out of 7 billion people the very best minds. In Greece, we can select out of 11 million people. Well, there's a few more million in the diaspora, but usually those don't have any good fate whenever they apply for a position. We don't even have 11 million. Actually, we have maybe 10, 20, 30,000 people who are well connected, who just get all the jobs and all the high offices. So can we expand our universe? Can we really get the best people to love Greece, to come to work to Greece, to build the new Greek society and to lead Greek society out of the crisis. I think that this is an open question for me, for you, and for anyone who cares about Greece. I will stop here and oh, I had more. Yeah. Okay, why not? I think I've covered that, no? Yeah, we need to choose leaders, and something that I didn't touch so far. Sometimes people say that how are you going to do space science in Greece? You need to build Cape Canaveral. How are you going to do something that requires something that exists only in one part of the world? It doesn't have to be so. We don't need to copy necessarily. We need to find something that will be our own niche for each one of these talented individuals, and then try to be competitive. And there's so many things that we can be competitive, and there's so many new opportunities happening every day. Practically, science is not a fixed thing. It's out there for the best minds to create the new technology, the new knowledge, the new ideas, the new methods, and we can start from scratch. We don't need to succeed 500 times. We may succeed 1 or 2 times, but these successes may be so prominent that Greece may be propelled from that rank 37 or 39 to rank 10 or even higher. So I do believe that that was my last slide. Yes.
That you did not have Maryland in
I know, how could I do that? You know, it's the worst thing that can happen during a talk.
Anyway,
but it's pretty much there.
It's just that I wanted to state the fact because we also wrote like a research paper that the last 4 years, 50 Greeks from Greece came to the NIH, and 15 out of them they have an NIH Research Excellence Award, which is like one of the best percentages. So that was my first comment. I have like 100, but I'm gonna limit myself to 2 more actually. So I represent, I'm the secretary of the Hellenic Bioscientific Association in the United States. We have 500 Greeks all over the States that are mostly from health sciences. And I just wanted to comment on the Greek brain drain that I think that the fact that we are publishing less and that we are publishing in worse journals than we did, it's for sure because of the Greek brain drain. I mean, at least me and 5 people from my lab that I worked with moved to the United States. But I think it's also because we don't give a chance to people who are back in Greece with money, with funds. So I was in a lab with 20 people, 5 people are gone, but 20 people are still there, they don't have any money to work with. So I really believe if we somehow build everybody in the European Union on the same page and give them money to do research, we can go back up to the scale, like in 0 time, within 5 to 10 years, which is 0 time for research.
I fully agree, and as I mentioned, there's still pockets of excellence in Greece. There's lots of really superb scientists, but unfortunately they're isolated and they're not supported at all. So we need to find ways to really get some support to them. Yes. And I'm open to all suggestions on how to do that.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
Ms. Patrick, I'm not a scientist in form, but what happened to the CARES discussion about permitting private universities? Would that make a difference?
So private universities are an interesting possibility. It depends on what we mean by private university. So is Stanford a private university? Is Johns Hopkins a private university?
One that's not governed by the big state.
Yeah, so if it is, then I would say yes, of course. But if we're talking about private universities being like many institutions that just get lots of money to give diplomas away and there's no research being done practically, and in these ranking of all sorts, they're pretty much at the bottom. I would say, clearly not, unless you see that as some sort of a business and that a few people will gain money by recruiting students and giving away some diploma. I'm a little bit agnostic on whether we need yet a new structure of these private universities, or we can do with the ones that we have. I mean, it's probably okay to stay with the ones that we have, but make sure that there is meritocracy in whatever is happening, and that the state does not really politically control the university. If we get yet another university that's supposedly private, who knows? I mean, under the current system, maybe it will still be controlled by politicians, or there are ramifications in the mass media and in news and in popular enterprises. So I don't want to focus on something that can be subverted. I want to focus on what is really key, which is offer autonomy to universities and offer them a way to select the best of the best. How you want to call them, private, state, public, I'm okay with that.
So one of the main arguments for this position, however, is that if you have, for example, a non-profit that's non-governmental, get away with this continuum of syndicalism to political careerism to ministership to prime ministership,
yes,
which is a seamless continuum of career in Greece, as you pointed out very nicely.
Yeah.
So if you have something outside this kind of entrenched, pretty much, subculture, it is a subculture, it's almost a ghetto in terms of world science, you might be able to introduce some competitiveness in the system, but I'm not sure about that.
I was involved in the establishment of the American Universities of College. And the American schools, these are all very prestigious schools, have come, and they were very enthusiastic. Mind you, the country's paid for the transition costs, so the kind of pays it. But I think there are serious American universities that would not put their diplomas at risk.
Right, right.
I mean, if they came, they would come on conditions that would not put their diplomas at risk.
I agree that it is a possibility, and again, I'm very open to what would be the exact way to materialize some sort of autonomy and independence of all these systemic burden that currently exists. I can tell you that at some point when I was in Greece, I was involved in some brainstorming about such a possibility of having a major US university support a Greek university, and then I became famous because a letter was circulated very widely across the entire community in my university and the University of Athens, and then I heard it had gone to many, many other places where it was dismissing the idea completely. And supposedly it was authored by a Stanford professor, obviously not a real person, but a pseudonym. That person was attacking me in particular, saying, and Ioannidis is involved in this, and he has the brain of an 11-year-old in mathematics and statistics and science, and we know very well that his research is a joke and he's completely, nobody. So I think that was one of the opportunities that I became famous, and or infamous. And I think that this is the type of response that you would expect to get whenever you try to touch some of the establishment. I will go probably ping-ponging across the audience.
One, that there was an effort from Greek Greeks that were expatriates to go to Greece to give them a formula for trying to keep their brains in Greece. I understand that because the government changed, that the new government said that everybody's equal, therefore we don't try to make someone better than others. The second part is you were born in the United States. There's xenophobia among the elite in Greece. How did you manage to bridge that gap, and did you?
I don't think I bridged that gap, but I think that it's always a challenge, and it's a daily challenge. And I have written a lot about these challenges in my real life experiences. So I may sound like a politician trying to sell his books right now, but my 2 books narrate lots of these experiences and some of the lessons that I learned the hard way. So it's not easy to go back to Greece, and one needs to fight against the odds. And obviously there is a tendency to just equalize everything at the lowest possible denominator, and many people have faced that whenever they have tried to do something. At the same time, some people need to try. So I think that we need to keep trying and not be completely discouraged. Yes?
Given your data on the percentage of scientists in the United States, for any of them that are not Greek citizens, what has the Greek state done to facilitate their duality and make it easy for them to go over the bureaucratic hurdles of the republic?
Yeah, probably very little or close to nothing, unfortunately. Somehow, even though there's a huge Greek diaspora and it's so energetic and so successful, Greece hasn't been able to really exploit in the good use of the term, all that potential. And I'm sure that you know best how much of a struggle this has been over the years. I will go to the other side and come back. Yes?
So this is a very appealing line of argument and an audience that's sort of inherently receptive. The question I have, I mean, you're arguing, and no one's going to argue that lower quality scientific research is better than higher quality scientific research, right? The desire of doing good science rather than bad science makes sense on the face of it, but you're arguing that that should be pursued not only as an end in itself, but because it will somehow lead to structural change and economic growth in Greece.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that claim is very problematic. Economists who have looked to find sort of a causative effect between a higher percentage of GDP spent on scientific research and economic growth generally can't find it for a variety of reasons. One, it's very difficult, increasingly so, to capture the economic value locally. Even if you convince the best cell biologists in the world to move to Greece, the new cell signaling pathway he finds in a new drug may still be made in Switzerland or Cambridge. And the other is that whatever effects of the economic effects of new technologies often aren't clear, right? What is the effect of the internet on economic growth? It destroyed some jobs, it created others. This second part is in effect is only more pronounced today than in the past, because in the past, if you look at technologies that changed the mechanical advantage, the steam engine, you could see a clear economic benefit. As sort of research tends towards information technologies, the economic benefit is much harder. So I guess that's a series of criticisms rather than a question, which I hope you'll forgive. But I would be curious how you would respond to that sentence.
Very, very interesting criticism. And I agree that there's mixed evidence about the impact on GDP if you increase your contribution towards research and technology. And some countries actually follow that line of philosophy. I was talking to colleagues from the Netherlands last month, and they say, our government really see research as a burden, that they need to spend that money, they will never get it back. But somehow, if they don't do that, people will start screaming that you're not supporting science and our best minds. Conversely, I think Germany strongly believes that investment in science and technology will translate to gains in GDP down the road, and some people even argue for a 5-to-1 benefit of 1% that you invest in science, you get 5% back on GDP. At the economics literature, there is controversy, but I would argue that there's less controversy in terms of what these people could do for the society at large. So to give you one example from my own field, I'm a big failure. I have the chair in disease prevention. I'm Greek. However, Greeks are the world champions in smoking rates. Okay? I mean, what worse failure could that be? We know that smoking is going to cause 1 billion deaths over a century unless we do something and we change the current course of the epidemic of smoking. And Greece is number one, both in men and women in the world, and things are getting worse. You know, maybe now in the last year, maybe there's a slight decline because at last people put more taxes for cigarettes. But so, what if people like me and many others could be in Greece and their voice could be heard and their interventions could translate to reducing the rate of smoking from 45% to, let's say, 18%, which is the American rate, or even lower. New Zealand is aiming to completely eradicate smoking by 2025. I think that the gain in terms of life years, in terms of productivity, in terms of many factors could be tremendous. Now, even that gain, some economists would say, wow, why should we let these people live longer? They will get pensions then. They should just die now, and then we're happy. If they're dying in their 50s or 60s, we don't have to pay pensions. So economic arguments can be very tricky and can even challenge, what do we really care about? You know, why are we doing science? You know, why are we trying to help other people? So, you know, we start thinking of, well, let's kill everybody soon so that we don't have to take care of them and they're not going to come to our hospitals to be hospitalized. Can you die quickly, please? It's getting crazy. There's no doubt in my mind, and that I shouldn't say that because any scientist should have doubt in their minds, but I strongly believe that investing in science is making a difference in a country. Just having these people around, allowing them to contribute to society in many different ways, I think it can change the landscape of everything that's happening around them.
I'm going to be probably an economist, and I'm going to tell you that, first of all, congratulate you for your very interesting, informative talk. And secondly, tell you that you touched too many policy-making points, extraordinary many to discuss in one evening. But I'd like to tell you that I think 2 points that I could mention. The lack of meritocracy in the universities is not due to public or private. It's due to the fact that we have a bad functioning state, lack of trust in the functioning state, as a result of which we have